This podcast is part of the Game and Entertainment Network. Visit tgenetwork.net to find the latest episodes from all our shows.
It's time for AggroChat, the official podcast of the Tales of the Aggronaut blog and stalwart gaming community, where we talk about stuff and things, and the stuff about the things, and sometimes gaming. I'm Belgast, and let's start the show. Hey folks, it's that time again. Time for another episode of AggroChat. This is episode 156. Tonight I'm joined by Ashgar.
Hello.
Grace.
Hello.
Kodra.
Howdy.
Tam.
Hello.
And Thalen.
Hi there.
It's good to have you back, Thalen.
It's good to be back.
It's also good to have Ashgar back.
Yay.
I don't have to fight every fiber of my being to keep from saying Ashgar at the beginning of that. It was hard last week.
It was really weird going first.
It's like, Grace! What? So, by the time we record this, and this gets uploaded and released to our listeners, it will be Mother's Day. So, happy Mother's Day to all the mothers that listen to our podcast. Because I know there are some.
Are there?
Yeah. At least I know of one or two. I mean,
Good enough.
Why wouldn't they?
There are people that listen to us.
Yeah. That's really the bit that surprises me every time I hear it.
Yeah, I know. It's a weird thing. Okay, so Thalen, since you're back this week, learn us about Stellaris and what has happened with Stellaris.
Well, so Stellaris has been out for a year now. And so...
Yay.
Yeah. And so for the 1 year anniversary of Stellaris coming out, they released some fancy new portraits that you can use for your aliens, like, space peacocks and things.
Space peacocks and space dragons.
Yes. And they also dropped a new patch, which I'm trying to remember what this one was named. Was it
Adams? It was named
Adams?
Adams,
Yeah.
which is hilarious to me.
Yes.
Because of what happened and all sorts of other stuff.
Which, fixed a lot of things, made a lot of tweaks. It, reduced, I think every single thing in the game that grants happiness had the amount of happiness it grants halved, which was honestly needed, because you could pretty much peg your happiness without even trying after they changed the way civics worked. But among all the other things that it did, it apparently made AIs shifting towards pacifism way, way, way too easy. So the end result is that this patch utterly broke war in the galaxy.
There were a few things that happened. They broke the AI so it was less likely to declare war. They this was added at 1.5, but it became more clear in 1.6. There is a long period of peace modifier, which gives abstraction towards pacifism, and they made AIs are likely to adopt the ethics of their factions. So eventually, the entire galaxy would become pacifist.
Whoops.
They very, very quickly, within 48 hours, released a beta patch to repair this.
But they solved the problem of universal peace.
Yeah, it's true. The sad thing is universal peace is boring.
When you have 4X and or Grand Strategy game where nobody's willing to fight anyone else, then there's not a whole lot to do.
That kind of allows you just to steamroll the entire galaxy, doesn't it?
It seems
some people reported that started to work, except that because everybody was a happy pacifist, they all formed a giant galaxy-wide federation.
Oh my god, that's horrible.
Yeah.
So you just became the villain for the entire universe.
You versus literally the entire galaxy. Those oppressive pacifists.
I feel
it was
like
kind
that's
of funny to read about, basically everything in Paradox games.
God.
Yeah.
I think that's the only time I've ever heard oppressive pacifist in the same sentence. I think maybe we have our show title now. Did they make any other sweeping changes that didn't break things?
I mean, they're just coming off of making a whole bunch of sweeping changes.
Yeah, the expansion and the patch that came with it, completely overhauled the way, that governments work. And I honestly think it works a lot better.
Cool.
But yeah, this patch was predominantly tweaks to stuff that was affected by them changing how governments work.
Whoops.
Yeah, lots of little small because we completely changed the way governments work. Like, this quest line doesn't really make any sense anymore, so we fixed that. Things like that.
That's also why I think the patch name is kind of funny. They named their patches after sci-fi writers, so this one was named after Douglas Adams.
Mm-hmm. So honestly, it makes sense.
I sort of love the emergent stuff that happens in these games, even when it breaks it completely.
Well, I think it's funny. I haven't played Stellaris in quite a while, but like I realized after playing it obsessively for a while that it's not actually the kind of game for me, because I don't care about the war part. I just want to fly around the galaxy and explore things. Like, I guess I would be okay with everybody being an oppressive pacifist.
I was really excited when they put the relatively recent patch in that made it easier to be an exploring faction, because it wasn't like, oh, you discovered some new people, your borders are instantly closed.
Yeah,
like that was one of my favorite changes.
Yeah, you're definitely you're a lot less likely, it seems, to get just completely boxed in early on in the game, the way it used to happen. In part, I think they made the way the game seeds empires around the galaxy work a lot better.
This is one of those games that I've wanted to play for a while, but like I know whenever I get into it, I'll lose like a significant amount of time.
I feel like there's a potential really cool opening for like an AggroChat live stream of us all playing together.
That would be kind of great.
Well, I do have one more entertaining story related to the not the most recent patch, but the expansion. And it's something that I actually looked through the patch notes for the most recent patch to see if they fixed this, and they haven't. So presumably it could happen again. So one of the things they added in the expansion was the ability to play fanatical purifiers, which basically shuts off all diplomacy for you. Like, the only thing you can say to other aliens is, die filthy Xenos, and gives you a boost to warfare and stuff. And I decided to try that out. And so, obviously playing, just a single race, going to war, beating other alien races. One thing that fanatical purifiers are still allowed to do is to set up observation posts on planets that have non-spacefaring races, and you can still observe them or probe them. If you are doing the active observation, abductions and probing and such, one of the storylines that can pop up for you is that this brilliant scientist has shown up on this planet and he's totally wasted down there, so we should totally abduct him and make him work for us. And you can still do this as a fanatical purifier. So that popped up, and I abducted this scientist, and he became a 5-star scientist working for me, and it was awesome. And then we had our next election. Because, we were democratic fanatical purifiers. And when there's an election, your leaders can run for president. Scientists are leaders. This Xeno got elected president of my fanatical purifier race.
Well.
So I managed to unlock the omnicultural achievement for having your ruler be of a different species class than your founding species in a fanatical purifier game.
Wow.
Like, my headcanon is that this dude had a really, really good rubber human mask. Because he was totally a lizard person.
So, doing it right then.
Yep.
Every day he hopes. There's no hole or anything.
But yeah, I saw that achievement pop up and I stopped for a second and was like, wait, isn't that the achievement for what?
That's awesome.
So, I have a question. Not about Stellaris. Ash and Tam, you both played Knights of the Fallen Empire, right?
I played the first chapter that was out when, in October, whenever it came out.
Okay, that's what I was wondering, is like, how far did you two make it in?
I made it.
I was not still playing when they added content after that.
I made it through the first arc, or most of the first arc, but then kind of petered out and haven't come back.
Like, to the point where you start recruiting other people, like former members of your crew, so on and so forth.
Yeah, I got to the point where you had a base.
Okay. And then when you're in the base, it opens up a bunch of little side missions that you can go recruit people that were from other storylines.
Yeah, and I didn't care.
Okay, yeah, that's kind of where I'm at right now. And I've stalled my forward momentum as I go off and recruit everyone.
That was pretty much what happened with me, except I didn't care about any of the people I was recruiting, and there wasn't story after that, so I stopped.
Oh man, I care. Like, that's the weird thing about like
I
having played through
members of my former crew, and after that, I didn't really care.
But see, I guess like since I've played through all of them, like even though they weren't really in this storyline, I still want them because like they're still my buds from
Does that include
all my
4X?
I like 4X.
But do you know what it takes to recruit him?
I know, I have no clue yet. I haven't encountered him yet.
Trooper, he just comes with you, no questions asked.
Really?
Otherwise, you need to PvP a bunch.
Okay. Yeah, I have no idea. Like, there's a Dr. Loken, which is from the Agent storyline. His recruitment seems like it's going to be madness, and I was wondering if, as an agent, you just got him.
I don't know. I haven't done it. I disliked most of the consular companions, so I didn't
The fact that
actually
you
care.
could ditch all of them meant that, this was a net positive.
Especially because the new companions, notably, I don't remember their names, but
you've got Lana and Koth, and Lana is the Sith lady, and
she's awesome.
I love Koth.
Awesome.
I love Lana so much.
Yeah, like she's amazing, and I was like, oh, you're gonna hang out with me? I need literally no other companions. Let's do this, you and I.
That was mostly what I wanted to talk about a little bit, is that this is less additional story content other than like a complete reboot of the game.
Yes. I feel
basically, yes.
This feels like this is functionally a sequel to the game, but it's laid out completely different.
Basically. It feels like a single player sequel to an MMO.
Right.
Like it happens to be in a single player game that you can play with other people seamlessly if you want to, but why?
I'm just super happy with like the champions that they end up giving you. And I think they're like way more interesting than a lot of the original companions.
Yeah, I mean, it's clear that they kind of abandoned the serious MMO thing quite a bit, and we're just like, you know what? Let's just keep making incremental story additions.
The other thing that I thought was really cool is, and this is just like a weird little side note, is I noticed that, so like the new companions don't care at all about gender for romance options. But I noticed as I start picking up the old companions that were previously romantic characters, I've started getting like flirt prompts from Eric Jorgen as a male character. So like it seems like they went back through and edited all of the old companions and made them just not care at all about gender.
That would definitely be welcome. I mean, I still remember how upset I was and so many other people were when this game came out, and it felt like such a betrayal coming from BioWare that there were no same-sex romance options at all.
Yeah, and it seems like it's less dev work to not. I mean, not seems. It is less dev work to just not care.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I mean, it always felt arbitrary when they set up those guidelines anyway. Like, even in other BioWare games where you have like specific attributes tied to each individual character. And it seems like it would have been way easier if they just opened it up.
I remember there being some sort of like protest about that before the game actually came out.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was.
Well, it was because Lucasfilm was dumb.
And Lucasfilm doesn't exist anymore.
Yep. Hooray.
Hooray.
And that's the only thing that gives me a little bit of pause is like, what's the future of this game look like? Because it was set aside. I mean, like, all of its licensing predates the Disney swap.
Oh yeah.
On like none of like it's entirely outside of the official canon now. So
sort of.
Well, it is outside the official canon, and they keep taking things from it that they like.
Yeah, they'll continue to do that. I mean,
yeah.
there's no reason to reinvent the wheel when you have something, that already works.
I mean,
and plenty of what's in there does work.
And as far as I'm given to understand, Disney, for as terrible as Disney is at maintaining its own game studios, it's really good about letting the studios that license its stuff just kind of go.
I mean, I feel like Star Wars: The Old Republic is in a really good place right now, and I'm kind of hoping that whenever that time comes down to it to renew that license, that they won't have issues, because I think that's ultimately what killed Star Wars Galaxies, was not anything other than the fact that they were running out of license.
Well, it's another one of those Lucasfilm things.
Yeah.
It was Lucasfilm decided that only one Star Wars MMO was allowed to exist at any given time.
Right.
And when the Old Republic got its license, they decided they weren't going to renew the license for Swig.
Galaxies.
Yeah.
And not that I was a big fan of Star Wars Galaxies, just that it did have an audience. I mean, it didn't have a huge audience, but it was a stable audience.
If somebody made a Star Wars Galaxies-like game again, I would play it.
Yes.
The problem is everyone keeps trying to make it, but then turning it into a PvP sandbox.
Yes, yeah.
That's why I like it so. I liked it so much, because it wasn't a PvP sandbox.
And yeah, honestly, when PvP did happen in Star Wars Galaxies, it wasn't very good.
Yeah.
It was combat medics, throwing things around everywhere and murdering everybody else.
No, it was pretty dumb. But, I like the idea of... I don't know. I like the idea of those... a Star Wars game where you can be a really wide variety of different things, as opposed to a big damn hero.
Yeah.
Being a big damn hero in Galaxies was a thing you could do, but you were other things also. That was neat.
Well, you've talked about this before, that there was a lot of diversity in the early MMO offerings that just doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if we won't see that kind of diversity again until, we make the jump to VR.
I mean, you sort of do. We just don't call those MMOs now.
It's true.
Yeah, I think that's, basically people have realized that maybe I don't want to play with just random people off the internet after all. So, maybe smaller games where I get to pick who I play with or what I want.
Well, I mean, Star Wars: The Old Republic is doing that pretty well. They've taken this multiplayer game and turned it into a deeply solo experience, and I dig it. I like the fact that I can run all these flashpoints by myself without having to worry about other people.
I just feel like at the point at which they've done that, they could make a better single player game.
I'm still really, really curious as to what's going to happen with FF11, because I know there's some development going on there, and it's not going into the MMO.
I wish that SWTOR had gotten fixed before I completely checked out of it. I was in love with that game. It was sort of one of the first contenders for an MMO that would be something that took me away from World of Warcraft. And it severely lost me, particularly when it went free to play. And I've dabbled a couple of times since then, and notably when everybody was, super excited about The Force Awakens. But I feel terrible because I loved it, and I hear you guys and Belle, lately sort of raving about how much fun it is and how good it's been to go back and how things, working out pretty well right now. And it's I can't quite get past my heartbreak.
This is how I feel when people talk about the secret world.
Yeah.
I went back in to make sure I could keep my name for Legends, and no, I can't play that game now.
I'm curious. Do you think Legends will be different?
I don't know. Probably not.
I mean, Legends would be pretty different. But yeah,
So it wouldn't actually have to be that different, because they're definitely changing the thing that I hated the most, which was their skill system. their skill system, which I loved until I suddenly didn't.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really need to be an MMO, so if it's not, then I'm okay with that.
It just cracks me up that they're fighting super hard not to call it an MMO.
I know.
They've invented some other term. I don't like it. It's so ludicrous that I can't even remember what they're calling it.
Something about shared world action game or something like that.
Yeah, it's like okay.
And to Grace's point, I feel like there's a really good Star Wars game in Fallen Empire that doesn't actually need to be connected to SWTOR in any way, but weirdly is. But I wonder how much would it have to change to feel welcoming again?
I mean, that's a really good question because, like, I suspect that now it is like different enough that I probably would really enjoy it. I mean, I had a decent time even when I went back and sort of dabbled again a little bit, but I think there's too much, for me personally, there's too much baggage still there, and there's all these little things that would annoy me or make me remember how things used to be and not let me just enjoy the game as it is now. Like if it was a totally new game or a sequel or something, I would be all over it. But like the thought of losing all of my companions on all of my classes and having to sort of re-earn them again, if you can, via the story and other means, like that feels weird and pretty bad, like just from an outside perspective. And maybe it's really fun to play through, I don't know, but I'm not gonna find that out.
The thing about that is like I've not missed them. There's a thing you can do that I've just not done. Like once you get settled into this world, there's a terminal you can go to and go find your lost companions. Now, what it'll do is basically make them to where you can play with them again, not in the main story. So like if you are on older planets or if you're running flashpoints or whatever, you can totally run with them all you want, but you can't actually interact with them until you encounter them in the story.
That doesn't feel good.
No, well, it doesn't feel good, but it basically was put there as a bridge to where, like, if you're super used to running with this character and you don't want to play the game because you can't run with that character anymore as you do raids, or not raids, you don't use companions in raids, but like whatever else you're doing, you can still run with them, like, and you can still have them outfitted however you like. They're just basically kind of out of phase with the world. Like they'll appear on your ship, but they're not interactable until you actually get to them for real. Mm-hmm. And like the same system is basically allows you to, if for some reason you lose a companion because of a choice in the story, you can still bring them back in kind of a pseudo ghost way and play with them all you want.
I murdered one of my companions intentionally.
Right, but you could go get that companion now. It wouldn't be a fully fleshed out companion, but you could still run around with it if you wanted to.
I murdered him because I hated him and everything he stood for.
If only I could have done that to Corso Riggs.
And I was really happy about it.
Why couldn't I have pushed Corso Riggs out an airlock?
It sort of reinforces, like, I really feel like Fallen Empire should have just been
its own game.
Like,
the thing is, though, like, it came out in October. They got the second part out in February. Episodic games are kind of not, unless you're Telltale. It's a little hard to do that nowadays.
Yeah.
I mean, so what they're like, I get what they're doing. They're basically using Tor to fund this story.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because they're making a lot of money off the cash shop in SWTOR. Like they have probably mastered cash shopdom more than any other MMO. Like the amount of stuff that they release on a monthly basis that is, pretty and cool.
I'd say the other game putting up competition there is ESO, actually.
Well, yeah, like ESO is doing kind of the same thing, but like
it's kind of a reason that ESO is doing the same thing.
Right. But there are things that people want to chase. Right or wrong, there are things that people want to chase.
Well, and I think that, and I think it's really telling that Tor started with the worst free-to-play model I've ever seen, and has morphed at this point into one of the better ones. I don't know if it's the best one, but it certainly has a cash shop that I look at and I say, okay, that's got some really cool stuff that I kind of want, and I don't feel like I'm forced to spend money on it in the way that I did when I first played that game, when I first played the free-to-play.
Probably one of the best things that they've done recently is they'll go out and grab, like, an item from one of their loot box packs that is super popular and super chased, and for, like, a week, they'll offer it for direct sale. So, like, I had a bunch of cartel coins stashed up from, like, I've basically been subbing to the game since we played it in 2015.
Really?
Yeah. Well, because they kept giving away stuff. Like if you stayed subbed, they would, like, I got this badass jetpack, you know, and so I just stayed subbed. I mean, it wasn't a huge deal. And, like, I'd poke my head in every so often, but, like, I wasn't really doing anything until recently. So I had a stash of cartel coins. So, like, here recently I was able to buy, like, Kylo Ren's lightsaber.
Yeah.
Like, they did borrow a page from EverQuest 2 of all places. Because once upon a time, like, EverQuest 2 had, like, this whole tiered citizenship model to where, like, you had the free-to-plays that hadn't spent a dime, and they had certain abilities. And then if you ever spent anything on the shop, then you elevated yourself permanently to a different tier, and then there's subscription.
That's actually not uncommon at all.
Yeah. So Tor has done that. So, like, to get access to your, you know, hot bars and things like that, you just have to have spent something on the cash shop at some point. I still think it's stupid that like, hide head slot and match chest are not in that pack of abilities, but like, I absolutely think that Fallen Empire and Knights of the Eternal Throne really are standalone games, but they're just being funded by this MMO. So, like, that's how they can make it now.
So, I don't half-baked thought. It feels super weird to keep playing my, like, the main character that I played in this new thing, because there's so much, like, backstory with all of these characters and so on that there's so much baggage with, like, that character, and it feels really awkward and weird to bring them back into the game, as it were.
Really? Like, I think it feels amazing.
Oh god, it felt so weird and wrong to me that
it's literally
didn't feel that way.
It's literally everything I have ever wanted from any sequel. Like, all I ever want out of a sequel is to be able to dust my friends off and go on another adventure with them. And while there's a whole lot of setup about how the world has changed, eventually that's a thing. Like, you can totally bring back your friends and go off on more adventure.
I wish I could have created a new max level character to go into that with. Like, I wish I'd had that option. Like, start me this story with a fresh character and use my old character as, like...
That option always bothers me with direct sequels, though.
Yes. Like it pissed me off to no end between Dragon Age and Dragon Age 2. Like, all I wanted to do was continue with my character from Dragon Age 1.
I like my story. I like the story of my character to end and then become legend in the sequel. I think that's cool. Like, I like my old characters and old companions to, like, have fond memories of our previous time together, but their stories are over and here's a new story.
I mean, admittedly, like, the hardest part for me to get into Andromeda was the fact that I just wanted it to be my shepherd. Like, that's all I wanted was my shepherd on another adventure.
I probably would not have even picked up Andromeda if it was Shepard again.
Yeah.
Like, I felt like the whole Shepard story has been told. Like, that story has had an arc and it's come to an end and it's concluded. And I don't know, I've played too many sequels where it's like, but we finished this story and now we're making more story and it feels unnatural. See, I mean, Prince of Persia being the most egregious offender here, or one of the more egregious offenders.
You're saying Sands of Time should have been the only game?
I'm saying that if you were going to do sequels, don't use the same character.
I mean, I think it makes sense.
They eventually did, and that game bombed really hard.
I don't know, like, often in games, many games, most games maybe, I don't identify enough with the characters that I'm playing to care that much one way or the other. Like, I often care more about the side characters that I interact with than whoever the characters that I'm playing. I mean, there's definitely notable exceptions. Unsurprisingly, games where I can actually play a female protagonist. But even then, I mean, like Dragon Age, I loved Origins, and I didn't have any strong feelings one way or the other about, like, how Dragon Age 2 worked out. I didn't particularly like the game, but didn't have anything to do with the continuity of the story.
Yeah.
Yeah, my problems with Dragon Age 2 and Dragon Age Inquisition were that I felt like it wasn't really my character anymore. Like, I was just playing some other character that I had to go through the paces. It wasn't me anymore. Like, I was wholly invested to the Grey Warden Belghast. And, like, if I could have continued on and been Grey Warden Belghast through Dragon Age 2 and through Inquisition, I would have probably just gobbled that content up as fast as I could go. But, like, because I had to leave that character aside and continue in the same universe, it just felt like it was a dead universe to me.
Yeah, I'm kind of with Grace in that I very rarely identify enough with a protagonist to miss them.
I mean, huge spoilers. I totally, like, I'm going through withdrawal missing Aloy, and
oh yeah,
boy, even when that sequel comes out to Horizon Zero Dawn, like, I damn well better be able to play as Aloy.
And you damn well better be able to import your save file.
I don't know that it would matter that much. I mean, maybe. I don't know that game has quite enough, like, meaningful decision making in terms of the story. But it would feel real weird if the protagonist was anybody else.
Well, I think this is also why I bounced so hard off Knights of the Old Republic 2, because it wasn't me anymore. Like, yes. It was a whole new character.
See, whereas I ate that up because
I've never made it past the part where you're the droid trying to repair the ship.
I always feel like I so often have that, like, if you have a nice complete story that wraps up and then the sequel cracks the seal again, it always feels so Frankenstein's monster-y to me. Like, I solved the problems, you're undoing the thing that I solved. Like, I made everything good again, and now I have to like trot these characters out, and like, it invalidates the story that I finished. But I also like stories to finish.
Yeah, and I like pretending that they're never finished, which is in part why so oftentimes I'll get up to, like, 85% completion in a game and never finish it off. Like, it'll just sit there forever. Like, I have novels in my bedroom right now that are, like, 90% read, and I just don't want to go across the final finish line, because then it'll be over.
Yeah, if I get to Act 3 in any given story, I want to see how it resolves.
Yeah, I have like the mix of that where, like, I will go and screw around as much as I can and, like, eat up just everything that I can of the world, and then binge all the story at the end and get through it because I want to see how it ends. I can't even fathom not finishing a novel. I mean, I can read them again. That's a great thing. Like, much more so than with games, where I find sometimes in games, like, the story is good, but the systems are maybe not great, or there are pieces that are slow or whatever, and it's a lot harder to make myself play through a game multiple times compared to rereading a novel.
For the most part, I feel like I only ever replay games that are somewhat long, which is a little weird.
I was just thinking that, like, games that I've replayed.
Like, I've replayed Legend of Dragoon a bunch of times. And that's
Final
like
Fantasy games.
45 hours each time.
Yep, Persona games.
Persona is like 100 hours each time, and I've played it 2.5 times through.
Yeah. Xenogears. I played through Xenogears a bunch of times.
Golden Sun all told is another like roughly 40 hours game for the first two games, and I've played those twice.
I almost never replay games unless, and I just realized it. Like, I almost never replay games unless they have some kind of compelling New Game Plus. And it has to be a New Game Plus that is not the same game but harder. Or like cosmetically different or whatever. Like Persona games get my replay because New Game Plus substantially changes the way I approach them.
I find that I restart games a lot, but I rarely actually play all the way through the second time, or the third time, or the fourth time. It's kind of like I'm just returning to an old familiar friend because I need an old familiar friend at that moment.
Yeah, I almost never boot up an old game that I've beaten unless I'm gonna play it all the way through.
There is one particular game I boot up on a fairly regular basis. Beat Mega Man 8 somewhat frequently.
I was about to say, the game I boot up on the most frequent basis is very short, and I want to play it all the way through in a very brief session.
The letter V6 times?
The letter V6 times.
I've also played through that several times.
I have no games like that I play those through once and then I'm done. Or in the case of letter V6 times, not even that, but it's a separate thing.
I've restarted each of the Fallout games at least a half dozen, if not a dozen times each. And Skyrim probably a dozen different times with different characters, and I play until something suits my fancy better. But
yeah, like I start a lot of games but don't finish them like over and over and over. And like I think about the only type of game that I've played through to completion, the same game multiple times on a regular, like often, are adventure games. Like for some reason those I think mostly because after I played through them the first time, like I know how all the puzzles go and I've solved all of them, so then it's just a matter of basically like replaying the story.
I know I've played like Link to the Past a lot of times. Castlevania Symphony of the Night a lot of different times.
Yeah.
But like I also know I'm deeply susceptible to nostalgia when it comes to games, which is why I keep going back into MMOs long after I've moved past them. I mean, there's been at least 6 times that I know of that I've gone back to Dark Age Camelot for at least a weekend.
Oh man, there's like an event horizon past which I'm like, I can't boot up this game and play it anymore.
See, I have a really hard time with like PS1 era 3D games.
Yep.
But I'm okay with sprite-based games from that era and before.
Yeah, that's true. I do boot up Mario World a lot.
I have a lot of trouble with Mario
World,
64.
Symphony of the Night. Mario 64 is a little questionable.
Yeah.
I don't think I play that anymore.
Like I picked it up for the 3DS and I was like, I'm going to play this now. And no, I just
It was
didn't.
a DS game also, so
I mean, I'm really looking
it's
forward
even worse
to
than the original.
I'm really looking forward to whatever the new Mario is. Even with weird walking through normal people city bits.
Mm.
The one for the Switch?
Yeah, Mario Odyssey.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to that.
It's going to be a weird mechanic to throw your hat out and then hop on the hat and then pick your hat back up.
I was thinking about this. I don't think I've actually played a game with a talking hat that I haven't liked.
I'm not sure how many games
with a talking hat is Legend of Zelda: The Minish Cap,
which I like.
Yeah,
and that cap is actually pretty nice.
There are a handful of games with talking hats.
What are some others?
One of the King's Quest games had a talking hat. I don't remember which one. Quest for Glory had a talking hat. Which
I don't remember a talking hat. There was an owl.
That owl was a dick.
That owl is a dick.
Yes. I do remember the owl, and that owl sucked.
I feel like there's a lot of PC games like that I missed out on because it didn't have a PC when they first came out.
I mean, I like Fallen London's talking hat. I can't think of any other talking hat games off the top of my head.
Fallen London is another one of those games that I really like, but I never play.
Yeah.
I kind of got to a point where there was nothing that I could do that felt meaningful, and so I stopped. But it was really cool while I was doing it.
The problem that I had with that game is like it felt like in order to do a lot of meaningful things in that game that you really needed to be playing with like a handful of other people that were on at the same time.
Yeah.
Because like it was constantly asking you to go like do something with someone else.
Yeah. Solo content. It's important.
Yeah. Like, I attacked Vexus so many times just because she's one of the few people on my list that I can attack.
So mine are oh god, blah, blah. Sorry, I just ate a Twinkie. I'm like, wow, that thing was gross.
Why did you do that?
Yeah.
So like, I have a theory. Around here at least, the original hostess went out of business. I don't know if it was everywhere.
It was.
Yeah.
And whoever it is now is just horrible. Like that's my theory, and I'm sticking to it.
No, that's not how it is.
Were they just always horrible?
They were always that bad.
Yep.
Oh, God.
I feel like the entire inside of my mouth is coated in oil.
Yeah.
Yes.
This is gross. I don't have anything to... Anyway, I'm going to try to get through the rest of this podcast with this mouthfeel. It's terrible. I live in what used to be a hostess factory. And they like to... There's like... The like lobby is set up to look like a, I don't know, cafe. It's got all of this hostess memorabilia around and like art. And recently, I guess they've started special ordering hostess products to like have free for residents or something.
I'm sorry.
And so I grabbed some because I thought, hey, why not? And I have regrets. Anyway, what I was going to say before that, minor aside, it's been a little while since I've had a chance to play, but I've been keeping up with Infinity development.
Oh.
And they've done a couple of things, one of which I like a whole lot, and one of which I really don't. So like Infinity, it's cyberpunk futuristic, very like manga and anime inspired. They clearly really, really liked Ghost in the Shell and Appleseed, and as a result, one of the things they have are these like big mecha. They're probably, 12 or 14 foot tall mecha that maybe taller than like 20 foot. They're big, not Gundam big, but big mecha that are like heavily armed and armored compared to everything else in the game. And they look really cool. And they're these sort of like centerpiece models. And with the new balance with the current edition, they've kind of fallen out of favor because Infinity is a game that's less about, shooting everything and more about being like more about scoring objectives. You've got your team. You're basically controlling a Shadowrun team, going in and doing what you need to and getting out. And so as a result, you have these like cool big mecha tags, and there hasn't been a lot of point to using them. And they even have all of these other rules. Like some of them are remote controlled by presumably ships in orbit, and some of them have actual pilots in them. And there's like a hacking program, for example, that can, force the pilot to eject from the mech. And then presumably you can shoot the pilot and the mech stops being useful, which seemed like it was sort of a nasty trick. And then it was like a nasty trick you could pull, and it made people even less inclined to bring tags. So this change that they made, which I think is fascinating, is they made all of the pilots, all of their tag pilots became specialists who can score objectives. The idea being that they have special training or whatever that lets them be a unit that can score you points. But they can only do it when they're outside of the mech. So there's suddenly this interesting game where you can get this like super heavy armored mech close to an objective, have the pilot hop out, hit the buttons or grab the supplies or whatever it is you need to do, and then hop back in the mech and keep on wreaking havoc. And so you're vulnerable in that little gap where you're outside of the mech, but it makes it much more useful to have one in your list. And it's a really, really cool feature. For the ones that are remote piloted, they have little bots that can pop out and perform the job for you, like a little helper bot. But the helper bots are less good at it, which means that suddenly there's this balance between the tags that were remote piloted and the ones that have actual pilots. And it's this great, relatively small, but this great change that makes you want to take these pieces that look really cool in the game. So they've been releasing these tag pilots. I think it's really funny. One of the bots very clearly is shaped like the shoulder pad from that faction's mechs. So you can kind of imagine like the shoulder pad popping off and sprouting legs and walking over to hit some buttons. Some of the other ones are a little bit more abstract.
Well, it sounds like a good way of handling large units without allowing it to devolve into Hero Hammer.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that was one of the problems that it had was a few years ago, they make changes to their tournament system, which is sort of like the default, mission style. And they knew everybody needed specialists, and they said, okay, we're going to make, in addition to whatever other specialist units you bring, your leader unit will count as a specialist so that you always have one, which is okay, fine. Except that what that turned into was, okay, some of these mecha can be your leader units. So bring a mecha leader and just tromp around shooting everybody and scoring all of the points with this single unit. And as long as you could support that, it was really, really strong. And so this kind of balances that out because it's like, yeah, okay, you can do that, but you're vulnerable when you hop out of the thing and hit the button.
So Infinity's turn structure allows you to do basically two things a turn. Well, two things per order.
Yeah.
How does that interact with getting in and out of a mech?
There is a dismount action that is a short movement skill.
Okay.
So as a short movement skill, which is half of your action, you can hop out of your mech. Which means that if you've locked down the location, you can hop out of your mech and hit the button.
And then the next turn.
Yeah, and then on your next action, hop back in your mech and you're safe. But at that point, if you've cleared the thing out that well, then it didn't matter that you brought your mech up because any unit could have done it. And if somebody shoots your pilot, well, now you've got a big chunk of metal standing around doing nothing because it's not like anybody can fly that thing. And the neat part is if somebody shoots if you've got like a remote controlled one and somebody shoots the helper bot, you've got to reset. You basically got to reboot the mech to be able to use it again, and you can't use the bot anymore because somebody blew it up. Just kind of a neat thematic balance. It also gives them an opportunity to release a bunch of cool looking pilot minis. And so it's like that's the change that I like because it adds this neat diversity. The one that I don't like as much, they really like adding. They recently released a manga because they really like manga. It's actually pretty cool. It does a lot of neat. Like I bought it and I really like it. It's a cool story. It's really, really characterful. Gives you a neat idea of what it's like, what the parts of the game that you don't see in the fluff are like. Like it's this neat sort of expansion of the setting. And because they like to attach promo miniatures with all of their things, they added a promo mini who's one of the characters from the manga, which is cool. And they gave him stats. And because they don't want to, they're sort of averse to releasing one of these promo minis that not everyone can use because they've gotten flack about it before. They've started doing this thing where they release a mercenary unit and say you can bring this mercenary unit in usually every vanilla army, so not a sort of specialized sectorial force, and usually like one sectorial. So sort of a generic mercenary unit that you can include. But man, do they make them boring. Just boring. They've released probably 5 or 6 of these promo mercenary units, and 4 of them are snipers, and not even very interesting ones. Like they released a sniper who is really good, expensive but really good, and they've released 2 more of these who are not. Like they're functionally very similar but less good for fewer points. And the one that really frustrates me is they just released one for one of my favorite factions that's like a sniper with a viral sniper rifle, which is cool. Like, that's a fairly rare weapon.
Also marksmanship level X.
Yes.
Which is terrible.
But it's frustrating because she's a really cool model, but she's just not that interesting. And like the sniper guy who came with the manga is, first of all, another sniper, which is a fairly niche piece to begin with, but also just not very interesting. And I feel like they're defaulting to making promo limited edition sniper models, but they look cool, but I don't have any reason to want to use them. But they're also super characterful and interesting. So they're these cool, gorgeous models, but I actually want to use them because they don't give me anything that I need.
Well, to some extent, that was kind of what happened with Magic the Gathering and all the cards that you got from the books, except for one. They had all these promo cards that came from various things, and they were, playable, but they were all kind of super boring, except for, I forget the name of the one that's like super powerful and got reprinted eventually. But I think their thought was that they didn't want to unbalance the game by, giving somebody something that they couldn't guarantee everyone had access to.
Yeah. I mean, and they're really, really good. They're really good about making sure that general releases for these limited edition things come out. There's a couple that people are still waiting for because the limited edition was a resculpt of an old unit, and the resculpt looks way better than the original. But there's no promo mini, except for the very most recent one, which is like 2 weeks old, that doesn't have a readily available like general release option, including like they did a Kickstarter, or they partnered for a Kickstarter, and one of the Kickstarters has a unique exclusive mini, and they've released the general release mini, and that one's actually going to hit before the limited edition release. But I also think that's fine. Although I think that the general release one actually looks cooler than the limited release one. But it kind of makes me think of just expansion stuff in games where you get these new things, but they're not all that interesting.
Mm-hmm.
It's like they're new, but I don't care.
Well, that's also kind of the problem with card games until they end up switching to a limited format, is if the new stuff isn't immediately better than everything that came before, then everybody just plays with the old stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's sort of this weird balance between like we released a new thing and nobody cares, and we released a new thing and everyone cares, and now we have power creep. And it's interesting because like War Machine is solving this problem in a different way, where they've basically said, okay, none of our stuff comes packaged with unit cards anymore. All of our unit rules are online through our app, and they'll be updated on the regular. And we have a continuous iteration cycle where we'll be changing the stats on basically everything continuously. But it's been interesting to see the community response, because the community hates it so far.
Knowing that this unit I have could become useless rather more quickly than the next edition is maybe not the best of ideas.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
Well, I mean, that's traditionally not been a thing that's been a problem in the miniature gaming world. Like, even if you think about all of the various revisions of Warhammer 40k, they still had supplemental rules to allow you to play with all of the units that you had before.
Yeah. And I think that 40k saw a super huge drop-off when, like, a new book for an army would nerf the crap out of whatever the coolest thing was the previous edition.
Yeah.
And invalidate people's entire collections. And, like, that's a bad feeling and drove a ton of people away from it. It's kind of why we have all this space for War Machine and Infinity now. 40k is coming up with the first completely ground-up new edition since 3rd edition.
Sigh.
Which...
My questions there are, do they intend for this to be an actual game?
I mean...
Are they learning any lessons from Age of Sigmar?
That was the thing, is like every edition, the comment was every edition since 3rd has mostly been patches and tweaks to the same game for the past 19 years. But this is a ground-up reboot. And on the one hand, that's my initial thought was, a ground-up reboot of that game can really only be a good thing because that game is pretty bad.
And then you thought for 3 seconds and thought what they did to Warhammer Fantasy.
Exactly. Yes.
Well, and the problem goes back to what we were talking about a few weeks ago, where nothing they can do to that game will ever be really good until they get rid of their stat system.
Yes.
Like, there's not enough room. There's not enough air to breathe between units to denote, like, the difference between a 5 and a 6 is massive.
Yeah. And until, I mean, it wouldn't be impossible, but they'd have to do some math. Like, yeah.
You know, like, even if they took it to, like, a D20 based system, that's at least some more wiggle room than a D6 based system.
Infinity's on D20. Infinity has the cleverest D20 system I think I've ever seen. It's blackjack. Infinity's dice system is blackjack. You have your stats go, like, average stat is about a 11 or 12. Really, really good is up to like 14 or maybe 15.
With some
really
notable exceptions.
With some exceptions. And like bad is like usually like 9 or 10. Usually doesn't go below that. But whenever you make a roll, you're trying to roll at or below your score, your stat score. Plus, after modifiers are figured in. And a crit is if you roll right on your stat. So if you get blackjack. It's a super clever system.
Functionally, the numbers don't work out any differently than, if it were just, a normal D20 and a crit were a 20 and you had to make a certain number. But thematically, it works better, and there's a bunch of math stuff that they can do with it.
Yeah, but it does give them a lot more breathing room. Game designers do math. It's important.
So, Grace, you finished this season's journey in Diablo 3.
I have.
Why did you do this thing?
You are a mad woman.
That is a real good question. I'm not sure that there is any sort of valid answer for that question.
Because it was there.
Because it was there. No, I blogged a little bit about it, but it's been very strange because I started playing Diablo 3 as a super casual, and I actually I read some people's blogs of folks who were way more hardcore than I am, and it all seems sort of fascinating and not over my head, but just far beyond what I felt like caring about, frankly. And over the last few seasons, I just I've been hanging out. I spent some time hanging out with people who pushed way farther in the season than I did and got carried a bunch. And then eventually just kind of got sick of getting carried and started doing stuff for myself, and that felt pretty good. And then last season, I got super close. I got all of the 3 conquests that you need without really trying super hard. And I thought, oh, maybe I can finish the season, but I never did. This is a couple of speedrun based things that you need to do. But this time around, it just worked out. And I don't know why I chose to do it, but it was there. And it's as stupid of a thing as it is to do. The challenges that you have to do are things like kill one of the bosses in under 15 seconds at the hardest difficulty, and do 3 of the conquests, which are things like master 8 set dungeons. Just a whole other can of worms that I've apparently now opened. Because really, the true end game is always the true end game, and there's a magnificent set of wings that you can earn for mastering every set dungeon in the game. And man, set dungeons are awful. They're
so just all over the place. Some of them are the easiest thing in the world, and some of them will make you pull your hair out.
Yeah, for instance, today I tried, was it the Invoker set for the Crusader?
Man.
It's
That's the fun
so
one.
easy. It's the
Yeah,
easiest
Yeah.
thing I've ever seen. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I never play Melee, so I never even tried. And I was like, all right, this is like the first set that I happen to get all of the pieces of. Let's go do it. And like on the first try, I did the whole thing and still had like 30 seconds left on the timer.
Yep.
It was ridiculous.
It's a total cakewalk.
And I mean, and compared to especially some of the wizard ones, oh my god.
There's
I
a reason
mean,
why I keep going back to that set, because I know I can get the mastery easy.
yeah, I mean, if anyone is out there who is struggling with like progressing in the season journey and they hate set dungeons, like go do that Invoker set one because good grief, it was super easy. But anyway, I don't know, it's just like it's Diablo 3 is always sort of this very relaxing, soothing game for me, and somehow it's still become relaxing and soothing even when I'm pushing like, you know, above level 70 in greater rifts and like trying to do all of these really silly things for the season journey. So I guess I mean it feels good to have this very, very long term progression in my skill set in this game and to actually push myself a bit out of my comfort zone. But man, I'm not looking forward to getting all of these set dungeons. I don't know why I've started down this terrible, terrible path.
Yeah, like when you started this, I was like, are you sure you want to do this?
No, I'm so sure that I should not be doing this, but whatever, it's there.
It's the Diablo equivalent of a sweet hat.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it really is. It's the Diablo equivalent of the best hat, and I don't know, like I definitely want to get at least the 3 classes that I really enjoyed done. So the Witch Doctor, the Demon Hunter, and the Wizard, and I've already gotten 2 of those completed. So like I feel pretty good about that. And then the other ones, you know, those are classes that I don't play much, don't necessarily care for, but it's not a terrible idea to try them out and actually get a feel for how they work.
And even if you don't like how they're normally played, maybe one of the sets will, turn it into something you like.
Right. And because it's such a long-term goal, you know, it's something that I can work on gradually over time as I pick up pieces and level the different classes. I mean, I happen to be doing this stuff in the season right now because I don't know why, but you know, once the season ends, it's also sort of a perfect activity for in between. I mean, really, Diablo is me killing time right now because I'm in between MMO subscriptions for various reasons, and Diablo is always there.
Yep.
But I don't know if it's something that I will actually ever finish, but it's a nice goal. And it's always sort of been this pie in the sky goal, but after having done this really silly thing and completing the whole season journey, and seeing that like okay, like that's actually possible and I can do it, not just something that other people do, and like maybe having those really sweet wings is something that I can do. We'll see.
I get it though. Like I go on these weird little quests and games too. Like most of mine revolve around wanting one of every class.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and I definitely did that in Diablo. Like, even though I don't really like melee at all, like, I leveled one of each just outside of the season just to have them, but I never did anything with them.
Yeah. I mean, the same was true with World of Warcraft before Legion, that I wanted them all leveled even though I'd never really played half of them again.
Well, and that's my problem right now, and that's what the reason why I'm tiding myself over with Diablo is because what I really want to be doing is leveling a bunch of alts in World of Warcraft, but I am like unsubbed for a couple weeks. And yeah, I've been going through and like now that I really just don't care about my main anymore, like I've hit that point in the expansion where I'm no longer raiding, I no longer care at all, that I'm free to level all my alts, and I have all the alts. And so, like, I really want to be doing is, like, leveling those and seeing all the class hall stories and the expansions of that, but I'll get there. 2 weeks.
I have no idea why I'm playing again. I'm going to blame you, even though it's probably not you.
I mean, I don't feel like I did a great job of selling it up last time we talked
you
about
didn't.
it. And I haven't been playing for the last week. So, yeah, I know that's all on you. I refuse to take responsibility for that.
Like, there's been a lot of people that over the last couple of weeks have been like, hey, we miss you. And so it's also probably their fault, too. Like, I actually raided on Friday, which is the kind of blow-off, I mean, not necessarily blow-off raid, but it's like the raid where, like, you get carried super hard because everyone's doing heroic progression instead. Because, like, the normal Wednesday raid, I guess they're most of the way through heroic Nighthold. So, doing normal in less than 2 hours. I think it was like an hour and 15 minutes, something like that, for the whole thing. That was kind of fun. I mean, I hadn't seen the tail end of it.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to see that. I've done the LFR version. I can't remember if I did the last boss fight, but I know I did everything else in LFR.
I need to play catch up on like some of the stuff that I didn't touch, like the Balance of Power quest line and stuff, since you can technically complete that now.
Yeah, I don't even know. Like, we worked so hard to get through all the stupid pieces of that, and
I'm still on the Mythic Dungeon step.
Yeah, me too. So I guess maybe at some point we might find a group to go do that, because it's just normal mythics, right?
Yeah, and normal mythics are super easy at this point, so
it shouldn't be a problem. It's just like it's been this mental barrier that I look at it, every time I look at it, I'm like, oh, I don't want to do that. It means I have to find a group, and none of my friends are really like none of you guys are playing anymore. I mean, obviously, like my guildies, I'm sure would be happy to do stuff with me, but I feel like a burden at this point.
Honestly, like, this is my favorite time to come back to World of Warcraft, because this is when they have catch-up mechanics. And I feel like with the way that this expansion was laid out, it was super unfriendly to alts. And
it's super friendly now, other than the professions.
Right. The professions are still horrible. Like, and that's really frustrating, because that was like a large chunk of the reason why I had one of everything, was so that I could be self-sufficient in that nature. But they now have, like, so I don't know, was Timeless Isle the first version of this?
Yes.
So they have this content that they keep putting in the game at various points where, like, there's a zone that you can go run around in, and it drops decent gear, so you can quickly outfit a character.
I mean, I guess technically there were the other weird islands in Pandaria before Timeless Isle, but Timeless Isle was the one with, like, really the fastest catch-up mechanics.
Right, that was a loot bonanza, and to some extent, Tanan Jungle also had a loot bonanza mechanic. The frustrating thing about both of these, like Tanan and Broken Isles, is what made Timeless Isles so great was the fact that you could trade the stuff to your alts.
Yep.
And I hate the fact that, like, I keep getting these soulbound item boxes, for lack of a better term, that, I mean, I'm just going to open up and disenchant, because it's not going to roll higher than what I currently have. I mean, the likelihood that it rolls higher is pretty, nil. But it would have been so much better if you could, like, because, when I was leveling stuff in Pandaria, like, I had a bank alt full of those boxes. And character dings, what was it, 90 at that point? I think 90 was the cap in Pandaria, yes?
Yes.
Yeah, so, like, you ding 90, you just mail over some boxes to that alt, and bam, they're geared.
So one of the half levels, maybe it was
I don't
95.
remember.
Cataclysm was 85. I think Pandaria took it up to 90.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
But anyway, yeah, I mean, I still have some of those boxes laying around.
I do too, yeah. And I've held on to him just in case, like, I'm going to level another character, because that would be decent gear to start the next expansion in. I mean, it would only last you through the intro, but, you know.
So going back to Diablo, I noticed apparently the Necromancer beta is back.
Yes.
Yes.
Has anybody tried it?
Ooh,
Yes.
I have played Necromancer, and, like, luckily this is a non-NDA beta. I mean, people have been streaming it. My only concern is, like, it does not feel very strong. Or at least, I had way harder time playing a Necromancer than I do any of the other classes at starting off. I'm sure they grow in power extremely over time, but, like, those first 10, 12, whatever levels seemed really rough compared to anything else.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, apparently they're a bit more gear dependent, at least as they stand right now. But, like, aside from that, because that's a tuning issue, and hopefully that will be resolved.
Right.
But the feel of the class is super fun. Like,
Corpse
just
Explosion is amazing.
running around with a little army of skeletons and ghosts and things, and, like, killing a swarm of stuff and then luring more stuff over their dead bodies so that you can explode all the corpses and get even more corpses and blow more stuff up is really fun. So yeah, I'm super looking forward to that. And there's some, like, just little quality of life change kind of things that hopefully will be going along with that as well. That should be good. And then there's also a couple of new zones, which I haven't actually spent a lot of time looking at. But in terms of adventure mode and doing bounties and stuff, there's some new areas to explore and do bounties in. My main concern is just when that content is actually going to release. I feel like it cannot get here soon enough, but it is probably still a ways off.
Yeah.
I somehow doubt it'll release before BlizzCon.
When is BlizzCon?
October, I think.
It's usually
It'll probably
November.
come out before BlizzCon. I don't know if it'll make next season, but it'll probably make it before then.
I sure hope so. I am afraid that it will not, but I will be super disappointed. Like, my suspicion is it's gonna be a while, but I will not be happy.
Have they said
if that's
anything
the case.
about how much they're going to charge for it?
I have not heard anything about that, and slightly nervous. Although, I mean, at this point, I'm so desperate for new stuff in Diablo that I will probably buy it unless it's really stupid. Blizzard's, like, at least with World of Warcraft, their cash shop things are sometimes questionable in price. But
Yes.
Are you referring to the $25 for amount that they like to charge?
I'm referring to, was it $25 for a hat that they like to charge? I mean, $25 for a mount is not great also, although I have paid that in the past. So I mean, I would expect this to be probably at least $20. I guess we'll see. If it's much more than like 20, 25, I'm gonna be raising an eyebrow, being really confused.
Yeah, I can't see them charging like 30 for it. I mean, they probably will, but I mean, that doesn't seem like a decent price point.
I feel like at some point they have to go where people start to think, well, this is almost expansion level and you're only giving me one class.
Yeah.
And no new areas or
Right,
new areas.
right.
And importantly, no new story, right? Like, there's...
I don't necessarily consider that a negative.
I mean, I enjoy playing through it.
Act 5 was actually not that bad. The ending is stupid. The rest of Act 5 is not that bad.
The whole game is kind of stupid, but I still like playing through it. And if you're going to be charging an expansion equivalent price point, I expect some story, even if it's really silly.
That's fair.
The other thing that kind of is starting to worry me is the fact that Destiny 2 has been available on pre-order on Xbox One and PS4 for a while now. Yet it has no PC retailers available for pre-order yet.
Suspicious.
Do you
I like
remember
it.
how long it takes Final Fantasy to get Steam in order after they, have already put it up for pre-order? Maybe it just takes a while to deal with PC retailers.
Maybe it does. I don't know. But, like,
So
everyone else seemed...
on Amazon and, on their store. And then, like, a month and a half later, it goes up on Steam.
Well, I would be fine if they were doing their own pre-orders, but they're not. Like,
they're not going to produce physical PC copies. Are you kidding? I don't expect to see that in any way, actually.
A physical PC copy?
Yeah.
Seems unlikely.
Maybe a collector's edition with a stupid statue.
We already know what the statue is, and it's actually not very stupid looking.
Well, okay, so that statue sold out.
Isn't it? Oh,
yeah, nobody has any of those. That was a GameStop exclusive.
Ah.
And, like, even within that first week, nobody had any of those available.
That's right. What, robot Nathan Fillion?
Yeah, like a chibi Cade 6, which is Nathan Fillion's character. But yeah, so, like, that kind of worries me. I hope that doesn't mean, like, there are issues with the PC copy.
To be completely clear, releasing for PC is a lot harder than releasing for consoles in terms of the amount of testing you have to do.
Yeah.
You don't have to go through as much cert, but, better do it yourself or things are not going to go very well.
Well, and they're also going to have to basically build their own patching infrastructure, whereas, they can leverage the Xbox Live or PSN patching infrastructure.
I mean, Activision is pretty buddy-buddy with Steam, so...
Does Bungie have, what is Bungie's PC release track record?
What PC release track record?
They've never released on PC.
Okay, just checking.
Well, okay, like, technically there was but the problem is like everything that was theirs that's ever been released on PC was a port. Like, even starting back with Marathon.
Oh, Gearbox ported?
Yeah, exactly.
Wow, I'm glad Gearbox learned some things in the interim. That was not a good port.
It was like all I knew of Halo for a very, very long time.
I mean, yes, but...
Yeah, they basically went from Mac OS to consoles.
On the Marathon PC port was kind of sketchy too, if I remember correctly. But yeah, so like that worries me.
They have one game that was released on PC, Oni.
Well, Oni.
Okay.
I did like that game, but...
Oh, and Myth was them. I completely.
Oh right.
That was them.
I guess I've blocked that out of my mind. That wasn't a bad RTS.
No, I mean, its only crime was that it wasn't Warcraft 3, really.
Yeah, like it released too close.
Timing.
Yeah, it released basically opposite Warcraft 3, and Warcraft 3 was kind of amazing.
Yes, so...
This is how I feel about Shadow Hearts 2, which released at the same time as Final Fantasy X.
Whoops.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly, they were trying to do some really cool things with it, too.
With Shadow Hearts?
No, with Myth. It was trying to be a different style of RTS.
Yeah.
Honestly, like, from what I remember, and maybe I am smoking crack, but it kind of reminded me of what Dawn of War eventually did, to where it was a more kind of story-driven RTS, like where you're dealing with, like, I remember that, like, you kind of started off with a small squad instead of
just in general,
a builder.
Yeah, you weren't building an army during the game. You started off with an already assembled army and just like fought.
Yeah.
So it was much heavier on the tactics aspect. But yeah, so Bungie's last PC release was in 2001.
But their publisher releases games on the PC every year.
Yeah. So probably they've got some, stronger backing now.
I should hope somebody can help, Bungie produce a shooter for the PC.
You'd hope so.
The only thing that kind of, like, not necessarily worries me, but I'm wondering about is part of the whole thing that they said that they were going to do was allow you to basically port your character's record over to the new game, even though, like, not much is going to carry it on. And, like, I'm kind of hoping there's a way for me to, like, port my PSN character over to PC, since there is no PC.
Anyway.
Well, and that was part of the thing that just confused the hell out of me. It was like, it would have been so much nicer if you had one set of characters that you could play on whatever platform, because like they're connected, and you can look at both sets of characters on Bungie.net, but there's the wall between the two, and things don't carry over between.
It still seems like there's some they're still not quite getting along in the best of ways there. Rocket League now lets you play cross-platform, becoming the second game, I want to say, to let you do this ever, after Final Fantasy XI. I don't know if there are any other games yet that let you play cross-platform.
I don't even care about playing cross-platform. I just want the character to span the two.
Fair enough.
I mean, like, yeah. I am perfectly fine with buying a copy of the game for all the platforms and then, you know, accepting that, oh, I can only play with this group of people on this platform. That's fine. Like, I get that, you know, with Xbox Live, you're limited to the account system of Xbox Live, and with, you know, PSN, you're limited to the account system of PSN. But I don't know, like, it would have been nice if the character itself spanned, so that, like, I could, you know, pick up and, you know, take the characters, you know, with people I know on Xbox Live, you know, tonight, and then tomorrow, you know, continue on and play with people on PSN, and then, you know, play on PC as well. And, like, I would absolutely buy Destiny 2 for every platform it was available on if I could just cross play that character. But anyway, we have anything else we want to talk about before we wrap things up? I will take the deafening silence as a no. Anyway, hopefully you enjoyed the show, and we will see you again next week. Good night.
Good night.
Night.
See you.
Good night.